Good evening, everyone. This week's Parsha is Parshas Yisro, Tavshin Pei Hey, and we will be discussing the one of the commandments, the 10 commandments that are mentioned in this week's Parsha, the Seres Hadibris. We're going to be discussing the last one, and that you find in Perek Chav, chapter 20, Pasuk Yudalid, verse 14. And it reads like this: Lo yisachmaid beis re'echa, which is translated as, you shall not covet your friend's house. Covet means that you desire it, you want his house. Lo yisachmaid eshes re'echa, you shall not covet your friend's wife. Va'avdai, or his male servant. Va'amasai, nor his female servant. V'sharei v'chamarei, nor his ox or his donkey. Or anything that belongs to your friend. Now, do not covet just for the wording itself right now. Just call it, even just in the English translation wording. It doesn't say here, don't be jealous of. It says, don't covet, which in the very least, the word covet is a word that, again, relates to jealousy, but it's about being jealous of something specific that your friend has, and you want it. You can be jealous of something that somebody has, and what do? You go out and buy your own, right? You're jealous that your friend has this car. So what do? You go buy one for yourself. Were you jealous? Yes, you were jealous. Did you covet what was his? No, because coveting means you want that. You want that thing that he has. Okay? That the Torah is discussing here, when you are coveting, you are desiring that thing that your friend has, you want that thing that your friend has. And the Torah says, Leisachmaid, don't covet it. Don't desire it. Okay, so that sounds like the Torah is prohibiting us from thinking something, right? You see something else that somebody has, you want it. The Torah says, no, you can't want it. You can't want it. So the commentary of Ibn Ezra cites, it's a famous Ibn Ezra, that brings the following question. It says, Anoshim Rabim Yismahu al Zayis HaMitzvah. There are many people who wonder regarding this mitzvah. Eich Yiyah Adam Shlo Yachmei Davar Yafa B'Libay Kol Mashu Nechmad L'Mara Einav. So, for instance, meaning, the question is, you see something. It's an automatic reaction. It's a natural, automatic, emotional reaction. That if you see something that you want, you're going to want it. So, and the Torah is saying, no, you can't want it. You can't think about it. You can't even have that kind of a thought of wanting something wanting that thing that somebody has. Look, if this is something that you like, it's something that is desirous to you. What can be desirous to one person is not desirous to another person, but this is desirous to you. It's just an automatic reaction that you're going to want it. And it seems very difficult or almost impossible for the Torah to tell a person, don't want. It's an automatic, natural reaction to when something is desirous to you. Now, of course, you want to go ahead and take it. Hey, that you can't do. That's called stealing. That's something else. That's the next step. But the Torah seems to be saying, don't covet, don't desire it, don't have that feeling, don't have that want. It just seems impossible to ask a person to do. So the Ibn Ezra gives an answer like this. I'm going to give you the answer the way he says it, and then I think I have another way, similar, using another example to explain his answer. So he says like this. Okay, you ready? Imagine you have, he calls a villager. Villager means he lives in a village. He's a very simple, poor person living in a village, right? Now, we're assuming he's got his head straight. He's got his head straight. His thinking is straight. He's not crazy. He thinks straight. He has a straight way of perceiving things. Okay. One day, the king comes through the village with his daughter, the princess. She's a beautiful princess. Is that villager going to covet her and say, oh, I want to take her and marry her? Is he going to think that way? Is he going to have that kind of a desire? He may have a dream. He may think to himself, wow, she's nice. But is he going to covet her? Is he going to desire to take her and marry her like he would feel for some other woman in the village, possibly? The answer is no. Why? Because it's impossible. Not going to happen. There is no way in the world that you'll be able to marry this princess. Right? It may say it would be nice. You know, it may say something be nice, but you're going to have that strong desire that I want her. You're not going to have that desire. It's not possible. It's beyond you.
Okay.
It's beyond you. You're just not going to think of such a thing.
This idea did not come to him, his head.
Excuse me?
This idea, even in this case, it did not come to his head. Before the desire, this is a whole idea.
The whole idea is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay? And he says like this. So therefore, so again, he goes ahead, the Kfari goes and he sees the beautiful princess. He's not going to covet her to marry her. He knows it's not possible. You know, another example that he gives, but he applies it like to this villager. Okay? If a person says, you know, you see that eagle has wings. That eagle flies. I want those wings. I want those wings. If a person covets a bird's wings, right, he's got a bigger problem than just coveting bird's wings. Because it's crazy. It's impossible. It's ridiculous. Okay. So therefore he says, don't consider this villager like, meaning he don't look like one of the crazy people. That desire to have wings to fly. Okay. Therefore, any person who is thinking straight needs to know. Whether it's a beautiful wife, or riches, a person does not find that because of his wisdom or his cunning, or how smart he is. It's all about what Hashem gives you. The sages say, the Talmud says, children, livelihood, life, health, that's something that is all coming decided by Hashem. And therefore a person who thinks straight, the person realizes that everything that comes to a person comes from Hashem, he will not desire nor covet. And he knows that his fellow's wife, who Hashem has forbidden her to him, he niskava be'enav, she should be exalted or beyond him, than the princess in the heart of the villager. Meaning, if Hashem says you cannot have this, then that should be ridiculous to you to have, beyond you to have, like even more than how the villager would not feel any kind of coveting towards the princess. Therefore, a person should rejoice with his portion. And he should not covet something that's not his. Because he knows that Hashem did not want to give it to him. And therefore, he cannot take it using his strength or his power, his trickery. I mean, he can do it in the sense of, does he have free will? He has free will. He has free will to go against what Hashem wants. But when he knows that Hashem doesn't want this is something that he should see as something that is just completely beyond his capability of taking. And therefore he should be his trust that Hashem will sustain him and do what is good in his eyes for him. So basically, the Ibn Ezra is saying that yes, the Torah is forbidding you to think this, to covet this. How is it possible? The answer is, a person has to work to bring themselves to the point where they understand that whatever Hashem has not given them is not meant for them. It is beyond them. It is ridiculous for them to think that they can have it. And if they'll think that way, then they will not covet. So it would seem that to me that according to the Ibn Ezra, when the Torah says you're not allowed to do this, the Torah would be saying to a person, you need to work on your bitacha. You need to work on your trusting in what Hashem decides to give you, and to know that whatever is meant for you, Hashem will give you. What is not meant for you, Hashem does not give you. Have your trust in Hashem that He's doing what for you is the best. Anything that's not by you is just completely beyond you. Ridiculous to think that it should be by you. And if that's the way you will think, therefore that you will not covet. I'm going to give you another example. You ready for my other example? Okay. Maybe by some people it's not that way, but if a child, has full respect, right, for their parents, and what their parents tells them is, the parent says no, right? The child wants something, and the parent says no, and the child's already mature enough, to understand no is no, right? Are they going to still desire it?
Yes.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Sometimes they will, if they don't trust their parent, or they're not afraid enough of their parent. But if they are afraid enough of their parent or trust their parent, the parent says no. It's no. It's not. It's irrelevant. I want that thing. The parent says no. If the parent says no, and again, assuming that the child respects the parent, trusts the parent says no is no. That's it. I know people used to be that way. I'm not saying I was that way, right? I could tell you about my parents were that way with their parents. If their parents said no, it was no. And if it's no, that means that it's beyond you. You're not going to covet it. Any kind of desire and emotional feeling you have towards it is going to be gone because it's completely beyond you. It's irrelevant. It's not possible. And that is how the person, the Ibn Ezra is saying, a person has to see and perceive things that are not his. And that when he covets it, he thinks about the fact that Hashem has not given it to him. And if Hashem has not given it to him, that means it's not meant for him, and it's just beyond him. Has no connection, no relevance, no possibility to him. Okay, so the Ibn Ezra asked the question, how could the Torah say, don't covet? This is his answer. But what's interesting is that if you look in Rambam, in the writings of Maimonides, when he deals with this prohibition of the Ten Commandments, don't covet, he actually explains it in a different way, and based on that way, the question is not a question. So Rambam writes in the laws of stealing, he writes like this: Kol hachaymed avdai ayamasai aybeisei v'kelev shel chaveroi. If a person covets someone else's servant, maidservant, house, objects, or anything that he could acquire from the person. So what did he do? He pressured him. He got people to go over to the guy and say, sell that to him. And he pressured him until he bought it from him. Even though you paid a lot of money for it, you have transgressed a prohibition. Meaning, your friend has something. I like that vest. Okay, it says Eddie Bauer. I like that vest. Okay, you don't want to sell it to me. You don't want to give it to me. So I pressure you. I send people over to you. I make you crazy. I pressure you until you say, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I pay you. I'm not stealing it. I'm not stealing. I'm paying you. I may even pay you a lot of money for it. At the end of the day, did I steal it? No. Did I transgress lo sachma, don't covet? Yes. And the Rambam points out that when you have now transgressed his prohibition until you actually take the article you coveted. Which means the Rambam is saying that this prohibition of sachmad is not just about desiring somebody else's thing. It's about desiring it to the point that you pressured him to get it from him, and you got it. That's leisachmad. Leisachmad, according to the Rambam, is not just about how you feel about something, how you covet something. It's about coveting that brings you eventually to get it from him because you pressured him. And even though you didn't steal it, if you actually, at the end of the day, you couldn't convince him, I made you crazy. But at the end of the day, this is my vest. I'm holding on to it. I'm not giving up on it. If that happens, I didn't transgress the prohibition of leisachmad. Because leisachmad essentially means, according to the Rambam, it means coveting that brings to actual taking, and you took it. But if you didn't take it, just because you coveted it, just because you desired it, you will not have transgressed that prohibition. Now, what's interesting...
But this is different. Yeah.
What do you mean?
Different.
It's a different opinion than Ibn Ezra. Okay. Ibn Ezra seems to be saying that the prohibition is just about feeling it. And the Rambam says, no, lo yisachmad is not just about feeling. It's actually about, of course, it starts with coveting, but it really means it's coveting that ends up with you taking what you coveted, what you wanted. Now, again, like I said before, if I wanted that vest, right? And at the end of the day, I didn't get your vest, but I decided, you know what? Okay, that vest isn't as nice. It's not as nice as his vest. I'll go buy a different one. Okay, were you jealous? Yes. Is it a good thing? No. Did you transgress anything? No, for sure not. Okay, you didn't transgress even according to Ibn Ezra. Well, I shouldn't say that. But the point is, you went ahead and you were jealous, and let's say, like I said before, let's say you're jealous, and I don't want your thing. I don't want your thing. You can have your thing, but if you have such a thing, I have to have such a thing, and I go and I buy it. Even according to Ibn Ezra, being jealous is not leisachmad. Leisachmad is where I want your thing specifically. I want that object of yours. And because I see you have an object that I want it too, I want such an object too, not a good trait, but has nothing to do with leisachmad. But according to the Rambam, it's even further. According to the Rambam, you're not even going to transgress leisachmad until you actually get hold of that thing that you coveted, that you wanted. Now, we know that the Aseres HaDibros, the 10 Commandments, are actually repeated twice in the Torah. You have it in this week's Parsha, and then later on in the summer, Parshas Veschanan, there's a repetition of it. There, when we get to this commandment, it doesn't say leisachmad. It doesn't say don't covet. It says loisis aveh, which means do not desire. Different word. Don't desire.
In Hebrew, there's another word?
A different word. Loisis aveh. Not loisachmad, but loisis aveh. Okay, which means, which we would translate as don't desire. It sounds like the same thing. Don't desire someone else's wife, house, slave, right? But it says a different word, loisis aveh. And maybe now that the word is changed, maybe there the Torah is saying there is a prohibition in just desiring. Okay? Says the Rambam, okay, in the same chapter. He says like this. And now listen to the words carefully. Anybody who desires, again, it's talking about desiring what another person has. Anyone who desires someone else's house, wife, objects, okay, or things that he's able to acquire from him, once he thinks in his heart, how he's going to acquire this thing, and he is desirous of it, he has now transgressed the prohibition of loisis aveh, do not desire, and the word tava, which means desire, is only in the heart. Now, so here the Rambam is saying that even without taking it, you'll transgress the prohibition. Loisis aveh, don't desire. So there's no action. You don't have to take it. You don't have to get it. You just have to desire it. But the Rambam doesn't say, though, just don't desire it. He says, if you desire it, once you think in your heart how you're going to get it, that means you desire it, right? and you think in your mind, how can I get this thing from him?
Make plan.
Right. You make a plan in your mind how to get it. That seems to be the prohibition of don't desire. Again, it's not just as Ibn Ezra understood in Leisachman about wanting, coveting. It's more. It's a step further than that. According to the Rambam, it's not a good trait to covet. It's not a good trait to be jealous. But there's no prohibition in that kind of initial feeling. The question is going the next step. The next step after wanting somebody else's thing is to think about how you're going to get it. Prohibition number 1. If you go a step further and start actually working on getting it and you get hold of it, that's prohibition number 2 of Lois Achmed. So very interesting how the Rambam approaches these prohibitions. But now I want to share with you a very interesting medrash. And this idea I heard from Rabbi Emanuel Bernstein in his Parasha Shurim. And he says like this: Parshas Kedoshim, which is in the book of Vayikra, is a parsha that's full of mitzvahs. Many, many mitzvahs mentioned. And the medrash of Parshas Kedoshim says that in Parshas Kedoshim we have mitzvahs that correspond to the 10 Commandments. They don't say it exactly like the 10 Commandments. Some of them are almost the same thing. In Parshas Kedoshim it says a person should fear his mother and father. That corresponds to the 5th commandment: honor your father and mother. You have different mitzvahs in Parshas Kedoshim that are similar and therefore correspond to the 10 Commandments. I gave you one example. The Medrash says, when we get to the commandment of Lo Sachmod, which we started talking about, don't covet, which mitzvah in Parshas Kedoshim corresponds to that? Which mitzvah in Parshas Kedoshim is the mitzvah similar and corresponding to that commandment of Lo Sachmod, don't covet? Says the Medrash, the mitzvah in Parshas Kedoshim that corresponds to Lo Sachmod is the Ahavta l're'acha kamecha, you shall love your friend as yourself. That is the mitzvah that corresponds to this commandment of Lo Sachmod. And that really gives us another very interesting insight. Whatever way you're going to explain Lo Sachmod, Lo Sachmod seems to be saying, don't take somebody else's thing, even if you're not stealing. You don't want the other person's thing. Don't make plans of how to get the other person's thing. Don't actually take it, even without stealing. But it's all more about, somebody has something that you want, and the Torah says, leave it alone, leave it be. But to go ahead and correspond it to love your friend as yourself would be taking it a step further. It would be saying, don't not just covet, but love your friend as yourself. Be happy that he has it. You would like it. You would be happy to have it. And you should be happy with everything. You should want your friend to have what you would have, which is what V'ahavta l're'acha kamecha means. Be happy with what he has. And be happy. Treat him as you would treat yourself. That would mean to say that it's not just enough to stop at don't be envious. Don't covet. But rather take it a step further. Don't covet what he has and you don't have. And not only that, be happy for him that he has it. Because since you love your friend as yourself, it's not just about not coveting what he has, but actually being happy that he has it because you love your friend as yourself. So that's taking it a step further. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful evening.